The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, the 9th chapter. John said to Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him, because he was not following us." But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us. For truly I tell you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose the reward. If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than to have two hands and to go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame than to have 2 feet and to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have 2 eyes and to be thrown into hell, where their worm never dies and the fire is never quenched. For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its saltiness, how can you season it? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another." The Gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. Well, good morning, First Evangelical Lutheran. It is truly wonderful to be with you this morning as we lift up what God is doing through Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, and to worship alongside you as members of the body of Christ. A special thank you to Carlos and Diane Pena for hosting us and inviting us to be here this weekend. Carlos is an LIRS board member, and I can assure you he represents Galveston and Texas very well. And also a thank you to Pastor Rhodes for the invitation and hospitality this weekend. Now, we know your congregation has spent the last several weeks learning more about immigration and refugee resettlement. And perhaps now you're asking that very Lutheran question, so what does this mean? What does this mean for me individually or for us as a congregation? Well, we're here this morning to offer thanks for your discernment, to share some of the good news, and perhaps water those seeds of discernment for ways you may get involved in this holy work of welcome. I do hope that you'll join us after the service for the luncheon, where we'll have more time for conversation, questions, and fellowship. So I am what you call a PK squared. Does anybody know what that is? I see one head nod. Yes, I'm a pastor's kid, but both of my parents are pastors, so I'm a pastor's kid squared. Truly a blessing and a curse at times, but generally something I'm very proud of and has really shaped me into who I am today. Both of my parents come from a long line of Lutheranism in their families, some of which dates back over 300 years. Over the last year or so, I've started doing some research on Ancestry.com and have learned some interesting things. One of which is that I am pretty much as much of a European melting pot as it gets. Louis and Catherine Raja, Italy. Jacob and Louise Apoli, Switzerland. Andrew and Elizabeth Sutter, Latvia. Gottlieb and Elizabeth Sachs, Germany. George and Mary Steele, Scotland. These are some of my immigrant ancestors. Like most of you, I have an immigrant story, despite how long ago it may have been. And I've learned that my ancestors came from all over the world. They arrived in ports in New York, Louisiana, South Carolina. Many poor, with nothing more than the clothes on their backs as they were in search for a better life. And if it wasn't for their ability to start new lives here as new Americans, I would not be here today. It's the truth for so many of us. Unless your ancestors were indigenous or were part of the Middle Passage, you also come from a line of immigrants who started new lives here. And why did our ancestors leave their homes? Certainly not because they wanted to or because life was easy there or something that they had to do. They left because they were experiencing famines, wars, hardship, and knew of this faraway place that was offering opportunity, new beginnings, and welcome. This is also who we are as a church. As Lutherans, we are an immigrant church. First Evangelical Lutheran Church in Galveston, founded by German immigrants. Other congregations founded by Norwegians, Swedes, Danes, Latvians, Slovaks, and now Indonesians, Indians, Ethiopians, and South Sudanese. In fact, South Sudanese nationals now make up the second largest group of African nationals in the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And did you know that there wasn't even a Lutheran church in South Sudan until 2018? So how did this happen? Radical hospitality, radical welcome. When the lost boys and lost girls of Sudan, the crisis was unfolding, it was LIRS who stepped up and led the way of resettlement of these South Sudanese refugees. Working through affiliates and partners all across the country, LIRS connected Lutheran congregations to the work of welcome through co-sponsorship. So who was it at the airports welcoming South Sudanese refugees? Lutherans. Who was it driving these new Americans to their apartments, doctor appointments, and schools? Lutherans. And so many South Sudanese refugees started to go to church with the folks who initially helped them. And over time, the church grew. And we now have South Sudanese congregations from Atlanta to Fargo and places in between. And it's that radical welcome that defines who we are as Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. And when I say we, I mean we, all of us, the church. We are part of this ministry. Since 1939, as Krish mentioned, LIRS has welcomed newcomers who seek safety, support, and a share in the American dream. Resettling over 500,000 and now also providing the vast majority of family reunification services to unaccompanied children. We're the largest faith-based national nonprofit dedicated to restoring a sense of home to immigrants, asylum seekers, and refugees in this country. Something that as Lutherans, we should celebrate. In every wave since World War II, people who fled for their lives from Nazi Germany, Cuba, Vietnam, Bosnia and Sudan, Syria, and Ukraine have been met on our shores and at our borders by the outstretched arms of the people of LIRS. Through crisis after crisis, LIRS has built a legacy of compassion, and along with it, we've cultivated the organizational expertise, government and community partnerships, and base of donors and congregations that make the long welcome possible. Working together, we resettle refugees, reunite families, and turn strangers into neighbors. Why? Why do we do this? Well, because Jesus is pretty clear when he calls us to welcome the stranger. Over the past few weeks, our gospel text has come from the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus is focused on moral teaching. We heard last week Jesus' words that focused on discipleship and servant leadership, truly expressing a mandate that each of his followers become last of all and servant of all. And in today's rather graphic and strongly worded text, Jesus uses this imagery to shock his disciples into really hearing what he is saying. He does so to jolt his followers out of being navel-gazing and self-complacent. Jesus must have felt he wasn't getting his point across, so he resorted to basically shaking his followers to snap out of it. And as we heard last Sunday, his disciples were spending more time arguing over who was the greatest than they were listening to his words. Sometimes I think we're maybe at that point again. Maybe we have been too complacent for too long, focused on self rather than community. Maybe the shocking images and stories from the last 2 months from Afghanistan are waking us up snapping us out of being bystanders and turning us into actors. An act many of us have. Over the last 2 months, a movement of welcome has taken place in our country. The evacuation of our Afghan allies has called us to respond, and respond we have. LIRS received over 47,000 registered volunteers who signed up to help. Corporate, foundation, congregational, and individual donors gave extraordinary gifts to support refugees. And we have shown up, providing food, clothing, medical care, and other immediate needs to those we are resettling. I know I'm incredibly moved by the courage and resilience of those who made it to the Kabul airport and were able to be evacuated. My heart still aches for those who had to leave family and loved ones behind. We recently sat down with a man we had helped resettle in the DC area who used to serve as an interpreter for our military in Afghanistan. He told us his story and allowed us to use it in a video, although he had to hide his identity for his safety. After fleeing Afghanistan for his life and leaving his family, including his 5 children, behind, he shared these words. When I came here, all of the people smile with me and they give moral support to me, and they supported us. We are given food and everything. So that's why I want to come and help here as you did for me. So that is the best way to help others rather than yourself, because we are human beings. We need to help others. This helping others is part of our culture. We are sharing some cultures together, so that's why I want to help here. How profound is that? Despite experiencing deep heartache and pain and being in a new foreign land, offering to help as you did for me. I don't know about you, but I definitely hear the words of Jesus there. This helping the other, this welcoming the stranger, the child, the orphan, the widow, this is all part of discipleship. And that's what Jesus was after when he was with his friends and followers. While they were distracted and arguing over greatness, Jesus was teaching about servant leadership. When Jesus really tried to get his point across, he used an example of welcoming a child and ensuring that these little ones have the right to believe in him. We are called to be servant leaders, plain and simple. And the biblical image of a servant leader is not a person devoid of power. No, in fact, a servant leader has the ability to lead through service. When we say God's work our hands, this sums it up. It is God who is working through us, for us, because of us, and our response to God's love and grace is going out and serving the other. And in doing so, we use our power for good and for change and for welcome. Many ELCA congregations end their services with the dismissal, "Go in peace to love and serve the Lord." And that service to the Lord is what was taught to us by Jesus and what was affirmed to us through his death on the cross and resurrection. But maybe, just maybe, we've gotten a little too comfortable lately. We like how things are. We're complacent with our lives and routines and the way of going about things. But millions of our brothers and sisters around the world simply don't have that privilege. When your village is burned during a civil war, you flee. When your crops no longer grow because of the sustained drought and changes in climate, you flee. When your life is in danger because you were an interpreter for American troops, you flee. And as more and more of the body of Christ finds themselves displaced and on the move, it is time to be the disciples and servant leaders Jesus teaches us to be. This is the movement of welcome right now. We are called as believers in the death and resurrection that there is hope. There is sun after the rain. There is goodness over evil. There is a new beginning possible. There is life after death. And surely, if we can believe that, we can believe in the power of welcome. That power of welcome that made new lives possible for my ancestors all those years ago, and yours too. So, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, as we leave here this morning, Let us heed that call and mandate set by Jesus. And may we go in peace to love, serve, and welcome the Lord as the word dwells in us. Thanks be to God. Amen.